Blending modes are the best option if you want to enhance everything about your drawings. Brightness, darkness, color, saturation, and so much more can be altered using these. There are over 20 different blending modes you can use in any digital drawing software, and PROCREATE having 25 amazing options. It can be overwhelming deciding which ones to use and when to use them, so I have narrowed it down to my 3 favorite blending modes that I use on each and every drawing I create. I redrew Nami from the new One Piece anime end credits, where all of the Straw Hats are waiting on a dock by the sunny. I like this scene because of the warm colors casted on the characters by a lovely sunset. I am creating the line art with the same technique I explained in my liner tutorial video, using my custom liner brush and a deep brown color to match the warmth of the picture. I made the line art layer as reference, so that whatever we color fill stays within the line art's bounds. Then I created a new layer below so I can start coloring. I started with the base color. We might alter the brightness and saturation later to match the dark aesthetic that we're going for, since this scene is supposed to be around sunset based on the original reference. To make the coloring process easier, I like to set a base color and then add a new layer with the clipping mask option to shade only within the colored part. I always segment my work by separating the layers, starting with the skin, then moving on to the hair, and finally the clothes. That way I focus on one thing at a time and I don't worry about mixing colors together. I want this to be a soft coloring, given that there's no need for drastic shading when the sun is setting. Harsher shading happens when the light is coming from a stronger source, like in the middle of the day. Therefore, I will keep the shading to a slightly darker tone than the base color and only shade close to the line art, creating subtle features on the face. I then use an airbrush to make the shading less harsh, using a slightly more yellow tint to make it look warmer. I then add one more tone of shading, a lot darker, just to create the slightest contrast on the features. Once I'm happy with the shading, I merge the layers so that I can create a new one above and start adding the highlights. So again, clipping mask, and now using the blending mode Screen. Screen has a lightening effect. Screen is the opposite of multiply blending mode, so it brightens the colors underneath. Screen is also less aggressive than my favorite blending mode add, and because we are aiming for a soft and warm overall coloring, Screen is the perfect for this. I will be using a light yellow tone, almost pastel color, to brighten the edges of the skin that are towards the background. This is to imagine that the soft light from the sunset is coming directly from behind Nami. I am using a bold brush. This one I purchased from a brush package, which I will be linking on the description below. I also grabbed the eraser tool with an airbrush to soften the edges into the base color of the skin. Remember, if it is a soft and warm setting, we do not want sharp and contrasty lines. We want things to softly blend in, but not too smudgy that we don't see the separate elements of the base color, shading, and highlights. Again, merge the layers together, and now we can move on to deepening the colors of the shadows. Yes, we are creating yet again another layer above, and using the clipping mask option. I tested different blending modes first, but I ended up opting for the blending mode Soft Light, using a deep blue-purple color. I used the blending mode Soft Light to cast very subtle shadows. This blending mode is supposed to enhance the original colors, creating contrast and intensity, but not darken or brighten. It's similar to the blending mode Overlay, which behaves like screen mode in bright areas and like multiply mode in darker areas. See the difference with just a slight subtle shading? It makes the shading that is away from the sun exposure look a little bit more natural by making it blue instead of orange. Then I just quickly finished up coloring the eyes. Now, time for my favorite part, the real highlights. Now it is okay to use the blending mode add, since we are doing a couple of little enhancements to brighten up the edges of the drawing. The blending mode add is the brightest, and as its name implies, the adding color increases the brightness. We refer to this mode as glow. I like creating this layer above the line art so that the line art blends a little as well with the coloring. I go all over the original highlights created with the screen mode and subtly airbrush to enhance the brightness. Now we move on to the hair. We are going to repeat the exact same steps, creating a new layer to make the hair base, so that we then only shade within the hair part without compromising the efforts done for the skin. I used a dull orange color for the base, so that we keep that aesthetic similar to the skin and shaded with more dull colors. Then, using again the blending mode screen like I explained for the skin part, we are adding thin, light yellow highlights on the edges of the hair that are next to where the background will be. And yet again, we repeat the same process for the clothes, using dull colors for the base, so then they can be enhanced by the screen layer with the light yellow highlights. For shading clothes, I normally make a lot of wrinkles and creases with the shading part, and then I blur them out slightly in random areas with the Gaussian blur tool. This makes the clothes have a little more movement and flow, and the highlight makes them crispier at the edge. Then going back to the add layer, we enhance those highlights with a bright orange color, as well as for the hair to make it look silkier and more vibrant towards the edge where the sunset is hitting. I finished up coloring the wooden box real quick, doing quick strokes to mimic a wood texture. For the sunny, I did the same technique as with Nami, but of course less details on the shading since I was planning on blurring it out into the background. I made sure to add the same glow with the blending mode add in a bright orange color to mimic the effect as with Nami. I merged the add layer with the line art and coloring of the sunny so that I could then blur the entire element as one. Now it had the effect as if it was further on the back. Finally, for the background, I tried mimicking the one from the reference image from the One Piece anime outro. I created a gradient of lavender to pastel yellow. Since it is a sunset, the warm colors will go on the bottom part since that's the last of the sun's glow before it disappears, and the night sky will turn it into cool tones. The perfect transition tone between the warmth and the coolness would be purple, so that's why we have that gradient. I added some clouds to fill in the negative space in the background with the same gradient formula. I added more highlights with the add blending mode on the sky and on the clouds to match the vibrance on Nami and the sunny. I often use the color correcting tools found in the adjustment tab, such as hue, saturation, and brightness, as well as curves, to achieve the right mood on the overall drawing. And the very last finishing touch to all of my drawings, which has become my staple technique, is adding color to the line art. For this, I created a new layer above the line art layer and selected the clipping mask option yet again. Since we have a lot of the bright colors on the edge of Nami, matching the line art accordingly would be most appropriate, since it wouldn't make sense to have a sharp dark line art on the lightest parts of the hair and the skin. To wrap it up, I decided to adjust the colors further. This is a bonus blending mode that I like to use on my colorings. Above all of the layers, I added a coat of bright orange and played with all of the blending modes until I decided on the blending mode saturation. This blending mode works best with orange since it enhances the colors of the drawing further. I added more blurry highlights around to bring it all together, and that is it. From a simple anime reference photo to a beautiful final result. Thank you so much for watching.